Sure that it's working. Yeah, it's working good. Okay. Last week, I do want to apologize for last week for anybody that watched home. I had to come up here. I told Keith, our class, the sound was cutting out, and it was just technical difficulties left and right. The sound cut out about 4 times. So then I would switch from this to this. And on the video, there were slides that I used that I wanted to show the whole picture. So I got my video out of the way. And when I did that, it also removed the audio. So there were several sections, So I come back here and I always check it right after I come down from playing guitar. I come back here and check it, make sure it worked. It didn't work. So I sat back here and re-recorded it. I get all the way to the end and I didn't hit record. Then I go back and record it a third time. So everybody's gone. Like Keith set the alarm on me and everything.
I didn't know it was back.
So I do it a third time and record it and made sure that I recorded it. I leave and I stream it, hey, here it is, because I thought it was important. I needed to finish out that lesson. Long story short, I'm walking to Mama Sandra's for lunch. I'm walking, so I'm like, I'm going to see what it sounds like. I play it, and the audio's going, it sounds like a disc skipping. I had to come up here at 2 o'clock, and I recorded it a 4th time.
You should know that.
I did. I know it. That I had it down pat. I didn't stutter.
Talking about not recording, when Rebecca turned 1, it's customary for them to have a cake, the chocolate cake.
Yeah.
And I had that big old video, y'all might not be old enough to have. The first ones that came out, it was like this long, and you had to put them on your shoulder, and I was and Gail was all excited about it, and Rebecca, she took a little bit, and she just dropped her face over it. And Gail, we were going to watch it back. I didn't take
the cat, the lens cat.
We didn't have any of it. She was so mad. And then we tried to redo it. She wouldn't do it.
No.
No.
Yeah, that's it's frustrating. Technology, Sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's the biggest headache in the world. I'm going to be reading in Matthew 27 primarily. I know the last couple of weeks I kind of jumped around a little bit. This week it's really going to be 27 verse 36 through verse 15 and 28. So that whole section, I just wrote it out that way. A little easier to see. Because I thought it was only fitting to go, it's Easter. And I was like, this is my first Sunday school class. It wouldn't be right for me not to do an Easter lesson on Easter. But I'm pretty sure everybody's going to have the same lesson. So I was like, how do I approach this? So I want to talk about a specific group of people that I think is often overlooked or not properly and accurately represented, I should say. So I want us to read the historical account, because that's what this is. It's a historical account of Christ's resurrection. So I'm going to be reading out of Matthew 27, verses 36 through 66, and then Matthew 28, 1 through 15. And I'm going to read this whole thing. Okay, it's going to be New King James. It says, Matthew 27, verse 36. Sitting down, they kept watch over him there. So just so we know where we're at, this is Christ. He's been beaten. He's been tried, and he's going up to be crucified. They've nailed him to the cross, and they've raised him up. Okay. So it says, sitting down, they kept watch over him there, and they put up over being Jesus, his head, the accusation written against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Now, what a great passage there, because they did it to mock him, but it was prophetic, right? It's fantastic. Verse 38 says, then 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and another on the left. And those who passed by blasphemed him, wagging their heads and saying, you who destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross. Likewise, the chief priests, also mocking with the scribes and elders, said, he saved others, himself he cannot save. If he is the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusted in God. Let him, God, deliver him, Jesus, now, if he will have him. For he said, I am the Son of God. Even the robbers who were crucified with him reviled him with the same thing. Now from the 6th hour until the 9th hour, there was darkness over all the land. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani? That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of those who stood there, when they heard that, said, This man is calling for Elijah. Immediately one of them ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed, and offered it to him to drink. The rest said, Let him alone. Let us see if Elijah was coming to save him. And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice, and yielded up his spirit. Then behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks were split, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. Now I'm going to pause right there. There's a lot in this, okay? So you could spend your entire life on this one passage that we're reading, but we're going to cover one specific part, okay? So it's not that I'm skipping over this important stuff. So we will come back to it at some point. And coming out of the graves after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. So when the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and the things that had happened, they feared greatly, saying, Truly, this was the Son of God. And many women who followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, were there looking on from afar, among whom were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. Now when evening had come, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who himself had also become a disciple of Jesus. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be given to him. When Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb and departed. And Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary sitting opposite the tomb. Okay, this is where I kind of want to focus. Verse 62 says, On the next day, which followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered together to Pilate, saying, Sir, we remember while he was still alive, how that deceiver said, After 3 days I will rise. Therefore command that the tomb be made secure until the third day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say to the people, He has risen from the dead. So the last deception will be worse than the first. Pilate said to them, You have a guard. Go your way, make it as secure as you know how. So they went and made the tomb secure, sealing the stone and setting the guard. Okay, I want you to pay attention to that language there. It's sent a guard and the guard, okay? Chapter 28, verse 1. Now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it. His countenance was like lightning, and his clothing as white as snow. Listen to this. And the guards shook for fear of him and became like dead men. And the angel answered and said to the women, Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come see the place where the Lord lay. And go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and indeed he is going before you into Galilee. There you will see him. Behold, I have told you. So they went out quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy and ran to bring his disciples word. And as they went to tell his disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, Rejoice. So they came and held him by the feet and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brethren to go to Galilee, and there they will see me. Listen to this. Now, while they were going, behold, some of the guard came into the city and reported to the chief priests all the things that had happened. When they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers, saying, Tell them his disciples came at night and stole him away while we slept. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will appease him and make you secure. So they took the money and did as they were instructed. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. So, sorry about that. If you've noticed, any of y'all are on Facebook and have the my channel where you have notifications where if it goes off, you'll see when I send it live, I kind of try to not just give a title to the lesson, but I give a picture to kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about. And in that picture, it was Roman soldiers' attire. So it's their helmet and their garb, because that's who I want to talk about. Because ever since I have been a born again Christian, when I read the story in Matthew, because Matthew seems to kind of really touch on the guards more than just about any of the other books. But whenever I read this story, they're the ones I'm astounded by the most, is this Roman guard. So before we discuss why, I want us to, and you guys are going to hear this to death probably, I want us to define our terms, right? Because this group, the Roman guard, is often misrepresented, especially if you've seen depictions of it, whether it be in movies or like some of the kids' Bibles and stuff. It's really, really deceiving of what these men actually were. Because, let's see if I have this picture up. It'll come up here in a second. Ordinarily, when we think of this guard that was sent, what we hear is these guards, okay? And what we think of, or what we've seen in film or whatever, are these two guards that stand on either side of the tomb. They're propped up on their spears. You know, one of them's normally fat or whatever. They're lazy. They're not overly enthused to guard this tomb. That's how these men are depicted, is that it's two guys, and that these two guys are put on either side of the temple. And because of that, it's a lot easier for something to occur, okay? Well, that's not the case at all. I want us to imagine what this Roman guard was, because I really started studying this. The Roman guard, that term means a group. So this is a group of men, right? And that group normally consisted of about 15 to 20 of not these fat, lazy, propping on a spear Roman soldiers. Yes, these were the cream of the crop, right? This was a high honor to be part of the Roman guard, because this same Roman guard that's sent to guard this tomb was the same Roman guard that would be sent to guard Caesar if he was in that area, or Pilate, or fill in the blank. So when Pilate says, you have a guard, I don't know if the picture came up, but this is really more of what you would see. Okay, think Gladiator. I mean, that's really what came to my mind, was these men are not to be trifled with. So when we think of that, kind of imagine a modern day, or now we have a modern day version of this with the royal guard at the royal palace. You know, the guys with big funny hats, which people like taking pictures of. But if you've ever seen a video of people messing with them, those dudes are all business. You know, they're disciplined. They're extremely disciplined, to the point to where, I mean, these guys are on multiple hour shifts. They can't go to the bathroom. They can't move unless they're marching back and forth. Or the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at DC, if you guys have seen that. So that's really more of what we need to think about this guard is. It's not two lazy, unenthused men. This is about 15 to 20 of the strongest, best Navy SEAL-esque soldiers that you can get. So that puts it into a little bit of perspective. Well, then when I started studying, what was the responsibility or the accountability on these guards? Well, if something occurred, so these guards, that again, it was about 15 to 20. They normally put them on about a 3 to 4 hour shift based on the historical documents we have. So they were on 3 to 4 hour shifts around the clock. Now, that doesn't mean that they put 3 or 4 there and the others went off and did whatever. They were all there the entire time. It's just these were the ones that could not move. They were standing guard just like this. The other ones were there, but they weren't, wandering off. But I'm saying that to say this. We do know that if they fell asleep, they would be killed. And that's reported pretty thoroughly, right? So if they fall asleep, they're going to be killed. But it's more extreme than that even. If one man fell asleep, even if even if they were not in front of the tomb, that man was killed, he was beaten nearly to death, stripped naked, and then they strung him up, crucified him, and burned him at the cross with his dishonored uniform, is what it actually said in this historical document, because he had disgraced Rome so much that they didn't even want his uniform to come back. And then the rest of the guard was killed for letting him fall asleep. So this is serious business, okay? This isn't, again, I want to emphasize, not these two fat guys or these two lazy guys. This is cream of the crop. These guys don't play around. They're there, okay? So why does this matter? Because when we understand that, we kind of understand what Pilate actually sent out, what he was saying. This is the importance of this. If you Pharisees, you priests think it's of this much importance, then I'll send this guard to do this. Okay? Now, we need to be careful. I just want to make a quick point. We need to be careful that when we tell this story and we talk about this guard, that we emphasize the discipline and the severity and the even the number of this group. Because what we tend to do is we'll say, well, they set up a guard and these two guys fell asleep. And when we do that, we're really bastardizing the truth. And that's what Satan wants. And we do that because it's more palatable to people, right? When we talk to an unbeliever, it's a lot easier for them to believe that two guys got tired and fell asleep than it is for these Roman soldiers who were the cream of the crop to fall like dead men. So these men were bound by honor and duty, knowing what they would happen to them. And they still, after they fell like dead men, and we need to look at that. They didn't fall asleep. The angel descends, and they fall like dead men. So let's see. So instead of, again, we've seen pictures where they're sitting up and they're propped on their spear and they're asleep. There'll be a picture that comes up for you guys. There's a little delay, but they fell like dead men. I mean, boom, right? They're out. So like a gas bomb went off. That's kind of what I picture. These men are laying on the ground as if they're dead. Well, after they woke and they see the stones rolled away, the body is gone. They know, they know what happened, right? They know. There's no doubt in their mind. And what do? Knowing what would happen to them, they go back and report it. Now, they know not only what happened, but what's about to happen to them, which is why I think it says some of them went back to the city and not all of them, right? They were terrified because they're about to be killed on the spot, okay? Now, again, why do these men, why do they pique my interest so much? Because they know the truth. They know what's going to happen to them. They report the truth. And then what happens? They're bribed. Hey, go and tell them that you guys fell asleep. Okay? And then while y'all were sleeping, they came and stole his body. And by doing that, we'll grease your palm a little. You know, we'll give you, and you know, some people are like, oh, they gave them some silver. They must have paid these guys a fortune.
Plus, they guaranteed them that the authority.
Right. That's because that was my point.
Would have done them no good without that.
Right. So my point is, why weren't they killed? Why weren't these men killed on the spot? Because they know the truth. They could have killed them and then went and spread this rumor. It's my opinion that it's because these priests, now they also know that it's true. Okay. They know that it's true. They decide to choose the lie over the truth. And like you said, I think that truth terrified them. So they said, "We'll go back out and you know, we will pay you. Go tell them that this happened. And then if something gets reported back to the authorities, so to your captains, to your generals, to Caesar himself, we will appease him, right? We'll take care of you." So that to me says more than just about anything, that these men know what's going to happen to them. They know they're going to be killed. They know they're going to be killed in a horrible way. And they know the truth. They still choose to accept the lie rather than accept the truth. Now imagine if this story would have been slightly changed and some of this guard would have done like the one Roman soldier we read about when Christ was crucified. He said, surely this was the Son of God. Now, as far as we know, we never read about him again, but from reading that, I believe he probably had a drastic change of lifestyle. These men clearly didn't. So not only, like I said, not only were these men not killed, but they were rewarded for spreading this lie. So this is the topic I want to talk about, and using this story, which is a true story. We need to make sure we emphasize that this is a real account of what actually happened. Why is this? What do I want to hit on? Is that seeing? People say seeing is believing. I know we've heard that before. That's a pretty common saying, but we as Christians, first and foremost, know that that is not true. And we need to tell people that that's not true. And we can give other examples that aren't just biblical to show that, right? So that's not true. And so here's number one. Here's example number one of why I know that this isn't true. Because these men saw what happened and they still rejected it. They saw, but they didn't believe. And not only did they see, but they saw the greatest miracle that ever occurred. That Christ, the Son of God, was there, crucified, died, and then was resurrected 3 days later. They knew the truth, and they still didn't believe. So that's how I know that seeing is not believing, which is why if you haven't heard people say seeing is believing, then I know you've heard people say, well, I wish God would show me a sign. And I've said that in my own mind. I'm not going to be like, oh, these people say this, because I will be honest and tell you that I have thought that in my ignorance. I thought it'd be so cool to see something happen. We've talked about this in Tuesday night quite a bit, so that because if you saw something supernatural, whether it's something good or something demonic, it would still solidify that this is real to some people. But it really wouldn't. That's my point, is that it really wouldn't. Is that people say, well, if God would just show me a sign, then I would believe it was true. But the problem is in the statement itself. It's not true because, again, we have this Roman guard that sees this and they don't believe. They see the greatest thing and they don't believe. I interviewed a friend of mine back in, I think it was around August, and as far as I know, he's not a born again Christian. And we talked about a bunch of different stuff, but one in particular, he actually got off on some spiritual stuff. He said, well, we were all created to blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, that's interesting that you say that, because are you saying that you believe that we were created? Yeah, I do. By what? And he went on, it could be something. I don't know what it is. He said, but I do think, he said something along the lines of, if I saw it, that I would believe that it was true. And I said, no, you wouldn't. Just like that. And he goes, well, what do you mean? He got offended. I said, you wouldn't believe that. I said, because you and I have both seen David Copperfield make the Statue of Liberty disappear. And we both know that wasn't true. That didn't really happen. And he starts laughing. He said, I've never thought about it like that. I guess you're right. Well, the same thing would occur if he or someone else that's a non-believer saw something supernatural. If they would take that miraculous thing and rationalize it to something worldly. I think we see it. We saw it with Jordan. We see it all the time. We see it when somebody accepts Christ, when they truly get saved and there's a change in lifestyle. We can see that because we have that end in mind. We know that it's true. But if you ask somebody else, like with Jordan, with my wife, with her case, oh, well, it was a misdiagnosis. No, it wasn't. You know why I know it wasn't? Because the person that diagnosed her was someone that loves us to the point to where they didn't want it to be true either. But it was. And then praise God, he released her from that. Now, one day, I think we'll find out why. But it was definitely a season that changed us. And we know that that was a miraculous thing. But when I talk to somebody and I actually make sure to not rob God of his glory from that, right? So when I tell somebody about it, I say, God saved my life. He healed her physical body, which is an awesome thing. But then you have to think about it. How much greater is it that he saved her spiritually, right? Because he may have healed her from that, but Jordan's still going to die. It's the same with us. He might heal us of some. David Allen. You look at David Allen's story. That was more than miraculous. But David still died, And it wasn't that God didn't perform a miracle, but you look at Lazarus. We read about Lazarus, and that he wrote, Jesus Christ called him out of the tomb, and he came out. We don't really read about Lazarus that much anymore, but he's not still walking around. He died. And I guarantee you that after people that knew him when Lazarus died, they probably thought, well, God didn't really heal him because he still died, right? So people will rationalize these things all the time. So while seeing that, I want to talk about that aspect. Seeing might not bring about belief. We know that it won't, right? Belief has to come by faith, and faith comes by hearing of the word. So that seeing may not bring about belief, but we can see someone's belief. That's the other aspect I want to talk about. Is, okay, when we're taking the Easter message here, what's something that we can, other than praising and worshiping God for his miraculous things that he's done, conquering death, what can we apply out of this particular story? Well, Rick Burgess has said countless times that you may not always believe what you confess, but you will always live what you believe. Now, for anybody that's watching or maybe watching later that's been in Mickey's class knows, he's taught us multiple times that you cannot separate who you are from what you do. You cannot separate those two things. So that is just a reinforcement. These two things are both reinforcements of the scriptures, which is why Jesus says that no sign will be given to them, because they're an unbelieving nation. That's what they are. It doesn't matter what sign I show them, they will not believe. To the extent of, I'm not going to hit on it too much today, but imagine the people that saw Jesus multiply the fish and the bread, that multitude. Now, how many of them were there at the cross or there at the tomb? They saw this. We are an unbelieving people. And it's because we choose to be ignorant. So you can't separate who you are from what you do, or you may not always believe what you confess, but you will always live what you believe. So what do I mean by that? Meaning that I can say that I believe that lying, adultery, fornication, fill in the blank, is a sin, and that sin separates me from God, and that will ultimately send me to an eternity in hell. I can say that I believe that, but if I don't refrain from that or diligently and intentionally avoid those things, do I really believe it? That's what I want to come back to. Because these people, this Roman guard, they could even say they believe that Christ was resurrected, but did it change them? Did it do anything? Are they doing anything different? Are we? So, if you say that and you're not doing those things, do you really believe it? That's my point. It comes back to it comes back to James, right? Or that word believe. It comes back to that word believe. It's what does that word constitute? And we can go into weeks on that word, and we will at some point.
Or 6 years.
Yeah, or 6 years. But how many of us know somebody that says they're a follower of Christ and they don't exude or display any of his characteristics or attributes? A lot. I know a lot. And in the South particularly, everybody's a Christian. Everybody's been born again because they've been baptized, or they went, there's people that I know that they're like, well, I'm a member at this church. Who cares? You know what I mean? I'm like, what good is that doing you? Are you going to that church? No. Well, why not? So when you talk to these people that aren't showing the characteristics of Jesus Christ that he commanded us to personify. When we say we're Christians, we're to be little Christs. And we're not doing that. That is evidence of what we believe. Okay, that's what I mean by saying this. I saw this happen this week, so I'm not picking on a particular people group here, but imagine sitting down at a restaurant and you see a group of women in the corner. Okay, and there are 4 women, and the food gets brought to them, and they decide to open up in prayer in public, which to me, that's around here, it's not that big of a deal, but it's still uncommon. But imagine if they did that in California. That's a big deal. Now, saying that to say this, imagine that same group of women decide to publicly display that they are Christians by praying over their food and thanking Jesus Christ for the gift that they've given them, and then they treat their waitress like trash. Yeah. Talk to somebody that's in the food service industry that works on Sundays. They will tell you that Christians or their church crowd, they are some of the worst behaved and least generous. Now, is that showing people that that I'm meek, that I'm patient, that I'm humble, that I'm a servant? That I decide to show mercy and tenderness to these people? Is that showing them that? But I want to pray in public? If I were you being those people and you're going to do that, please don't pray in public because you're giving us a bad name.
Well, probably while the one was praying, the other 3 was thinking about the food.
Probably so. It's getting cold. So I do want to say this though. Does that mean that those people aren't Christians? Not necessarily.
Poor representation.
Yeah, but it does mean they're probably bad ones. They're probably bad Christians. And what I mean by that is they're not very good Christians. They're not doing what they're supposed to be. They're not living what they confess. And that is a problem. So we don't judge people in the sense, you hear that all the time. You're not supposed to judge people in the sense that we don't determine their eternity. Okay, I can't say I'm sending you to hell. In that regard, we don't judge them. But we are commanded to discern. And God has given us the discernment. And he tells us that you can tell a tree by its what, Keith? Come on.
Fruit.
Boom, nailed it. You can tell a tree by its fruit, right? An apple tree is not going to bear peaches. It's not going to happen. Just like a tree of righteousness is not going to bear the fruit of sin. So we are warned about this in Matthew 7. So Matthew 7, verses 21 through 23. It's not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. So many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, away from me, I never knew you. Depart from me, you worker of iniquity. You who practice lawlessness, right? Who practice it. That's a very important part. So I want to wrap things up by saying that if you've ever asked for a sign, if you've ever asked for God to just show you, to manifest something supernatural, to solidify your faith, that does not mean you're a Christian or that you're not a Christian. I don't want to seem like that's what I'm saying, because it's not. But you may be able to relate to Thomas a little more. What I mean by that is over in John, I've got it written up here, chapter 20, verses 24 through 29. Now we know that Thomas was a disciple of Jesus. So let's keep that in mind. This isn't Judas we're talking about. This is Thomas. Okay, it says, this is after Christ was crucified and resurrected, and they came back and they all came together and we've seen him, right? It says, now Thomas, called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. And the other disciples therefore said to him, we have seen the Lord. Now imagine the emphasis on that sentence. So he, Thomas, said to them, unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, put my finger into the print of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. And after 8 days, his disciples were again inside and Thomas with them. Then Jesus came, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst and said, "Peace to you." And then Jesus said to Thomas, "Reach your finger here and reach your hand here and put it in my side. Do not be unbelieving, but believing." And Thomas answered and said to him, "My Lord and my God."
Can't you just say, Thomas, he's up there telling me don't believe? You know, and Jesus supernaturally touched him in there.
You know, we've talked about this in our Tuesday night class with Thomas, but it never tells us that Thomas actually does touch Jesus' hands or sides. So, you know, Thomas makes this bold statement of, unless I put my hands there, I won't believe. And then Jesus, is just there, appears, right? And then he tells him. Now, Jesus wasn't there when Thomas said this, and Thomas knows that. And he challenges him, right? Put your hands here where the nails were. Put your hands at my side. And he falls on his knees and says, "My Lord and my God." It doesn't say that he touched him. So he did have that belief when it was challenged. Okay, now we don't know if he did or not, but I'm going to assume he probably didn't.
You know, sometimes if we watch a religious figure, and if we don't watch it, we put so much confidence in them instead of Christ. I remember there was this young girl, and I can't remember her name, back in around 2000 or somewhere in there. She was a real popular contemporary singing artist, and had a lot of following. You know, really had a good following and had some hits. And I was watching. I can't remember. There used to be some late night shows you could watch without them being political.
Mm-hmm.
There hadn't been one in a long time.
No.
I can't remember. I don't think it was Johnny Carson. I think he had already gone, but I'm not sure. But anyway, this girl was on this talk show, and she was talking about. She was probably up by that time 30, and she had met this 18-year-old boy at the beach, and she was talking about how she'd fallen in love with him, and it just in a non-Christian way. And she got up on the desk and started, and it just kind of at first devastated me, and then I thought, Lord, I will not let her affect my belief. I just won't ever be that way. What she's doing, you know, and so we have to. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word. What you see will deceive you.
Right. And listen to what Jesus says here at the end. He says, "Thomas, because you have seen me, you believed. Blessed are those who have not yet, or who have not seen, yet still believe." That's us. Jesus is talking about us then. So I asked these questions last week. I want to reiterate a couple of them, which is, what do you believe really? And let's look at our lives, examine what we are showing the world that we believe. Let's not be like the Romans. Let's not suppress the truth, right? They exchanged the truth for a lie because it's more palatable. It's easier to digest. Let's not be deceived because it's easy to be. And unless we're verifying things with our empirical data, which is the Word of God, we will be. I want to really emphasize that if we're not verifying what Josh says or what I say or what Mickey or whoever, Donald, if we're not verifying what these men, our teachers, our mentors are saying with the Word, you will be deceived. Always. So we have to cling to that. So I do charge us this week with that self-examination. But I don't want to end with that. I want to end with encouragement, because today is the resurrection day, right? Today is the anniversary of the greatest day in history. So I want to encourage us to know that for those of us who haven't seen yet still believe, we are blessed, which means what? The object of God's favor. We are the object of God's favor, those of us who have not seen him and believe him. So the Creator God, who knows all things, controls all things, is altogether lovely and altogether holy. He knows you. If you believe this, he knows you and he loves you. And there will be a day where we will dwell with him in heaven as joint heirs in Christ. That There's nothing more encouraging than that. So on this day, where we remember Christ's resurrection, where he himself brought himself from death to life, let's remember our change. Let's remember Christ bringing us from death to life, and then let's rejoice together in it. When we go in service and we're singing, let's sing with praise. Praise God. I mean, how often do you really get down? Thank you, God. Your prayer is just sincere. Thank you for saving me, without petitioning for something in return. So let's encourage one another and rejoice together, because for those of us who do believe, God loves us, he chose us, and he wants us to draw closer to him. So that's all I've got this week. Next week, I'll have my headliner and stuff up next week a little earlier. I already kind of know what I want to talk about, but it'll give away too much. So thank you all for coming into class. For those of you who are at home, I encourage you to come into class if you feel comfortable. If you don't, feel free to continue to watch online. But we would love to have you here. We do need to fellowship with one another, because for those of us who were either in quarantine or whatever last year, you remember us not being able to fellowship with anybody. I mean, it's tough. This is our spiritual recharge station, right? The church is. This is where we should come together in one accord and encourage and uplift one another and edify each other. So anyway, I say that to say that I do miss seeing everybody, and I do appreciate those who do watch at home or those that come in class. So thank you all. Now I appreciate it.
That's all, folks.